How can an archaeological dig, a portal into the lives of ancient people and cultures, help us in everyday life? Does it really matter that we understand the way the Egyptians buried their dead, or that the Babylonians, Romans, or Greeks cooked, educated, competed, or worshiped their gods? For Christian people, evidence matters. Our faith is not disconnected from science or history. It's integrated as a whole, part of a majestic, seamless story that connects you and me with our Creator. Today we'll journey to the town of Magdala on the Sea of Galilee. Yes, that Sea of Galilee that was so intertwined with the ministry of Jesus. We'll visit an archaeological site that's considered one of the most significant finds of Christians and Jews. It's a conversation you won't want to miss. Father Eamon Kelly is an Irishman in Israel. He's joining us from the Magdala Center, a spectacular hotel and conference facility on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. In 2009, the team building the site came across a first-century synagogue, a site that for Christians and Jews is considered one of the most significant historical finds. Instead of stopping construction, they integrated the archaeological site into the hotel's design, providing one of the most unusual and, for many, moving experiences, a true blending of ancient and modern. Every day at Magdala, Father Kelly walks dozens of visitors around this powerful site, many who are retracing the steps of Jesus' earthly ministry around the Galilee region of Israel. Father Kelly, we're catching you at sunset in Israel, and after a very full day for you. Thank you for joining us in State of Independence.
I'm very happy, Joe. I thank you. I'm privileged to be here to chat with you and with all your viewers.
So tell us what's behind you. It's a majestic view, but what body of water is that behind you?
That's the sea. It's the Sea of Galilee, the lowest freshwater lake on the planet Earth, 208 meters below sea level.
Wow.
In the Jordan Valley.
Wow.
Immediately to my shoulder here, you see an infinity pool, and then beyond that is the lake.
Wow.
So just the water right here is an infinity pool right beside me.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. And those are palm trees, I'm guessing, as well behind you?
Yes, well, yeah, and the ones you're dominating there right behind me are eucalyptus trees. I'm not sure if I'm blocking a palm tree in my position. And the eucalyptus trees were planted here more recently in the last century or so with the purpose of drying up swampy ground because they consume a lot of water.
What's the weather like there? Is it warm year round, or does it get cold?
No, yeah, well, it can get a little chilly if I'm living here now 16 years, so you get used to it. And it's definitely a far cry from Ireland. Our rain stops in April at the latest, if it hasn't stopped in March. And we didn't get rain yet until November. And then we can expect heavy rain in November, December, January, February. And it's usually just for a few days, a few times during each month. And some winters are better, some winters are scantier, and that rain is very important for the entire Middle East. And so some years can be very dry. And so even in my time here, we have seen times when there was really parched for years. And then other years, in the last 4 years, we've had quite an abundance. We had quite wet winters, which were a great blessing.
So you're right there by the Sea of Galilee, and that obviously for Christian people is an important place because so much of the ministry of Jesus took place there. Yeah. And I was asking you before we went on air about the fish that are there, because in so many stories the Lord ate fish. You know, they caught fish from the Sea of Galilee and they ate it. What kind of fish do you think he was? We don't know what he was eating 2,000 years ago, but what have they got in there today? What kind of fish?
Well, there's the famous fish that's served for the pilgrims is called St. Peter's fish, because there were so many stories with Peter, the fisherman. In fact, he's in that icon behind me over in the corner there. Well, I need to point in this. I'm getting turned around by the mirror effect of the image. And we had so many stories. He even pulled out a fish and took out 2 coins on Jesus' command to pay their temple tax, which was suggested by some of the people there. Jesus cooked fish on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. And there's a fish here that's originally a salt fish, like a salt sea fish. And we have fresh water in the Sea of Galilee. And the geologists tell us that history goes back to a time when we were connected with the oceans. And that's also the cause of all the limestone in the area. And then this fish, when the tectonic plates, the Arabian and the African plate movements caused a cutoff of the communication between the Red Sea and the Jordan Valley, then which led to the development eventually of the Dead Sea. And the Sea of Galilee remained then as a freshwater lake eventually, and with all the input of fresh water from the Jordan River, the melting snows from Mount Hermon, the rain all around, and this Sea of Galilee is a depression inside of Galilee, so it takes all the rain from all the surrounding hills. And so it's a freshwater lake, and the fish adapted because that was probably a very slow process. And so the tilapia fish that you eat in America is the same, understood to be the same genetically as St. Peter's fish.
It sounds delicious. Of course, you're making me hungry for tilapia. But what would it have been like? What would that area have looked like when Jesus was doing his ministry? Would it have been similar to the way it looks now, or would it be different?
Well, there are obviously some developments, especially in our times in the last century, but for the most part, thanks be to God up to now, the environment of the Sea of Galilee in general, you could say, has not changed very much. Obviously, there are some extra roads, there are some new housing areas, and there are very little high rises except for in the city of Tiberias. And so at nighttime, were it not for the electric lights, you could say that's what Jesus saw when the moon rises over the Sea of Galilee, or in the morning when the sun rises and you don't notice the houses on the other side so much and there are no more lights. So you can say that Jesus saw what we saw. And I would say, you were asking me earlier about the weather, it gets very hot here because being the deepest depression on the planet, so the hot air rises up, and then the colder air comes in from the Mediterranean, so there's a constant breeze, like we read in Genesis chapter 3. After the fall, God comes in the typical breeze of the evening, the breeze of the afternoon, with Adam and Eve to have a chat, and he's calling out, "Where are you, Adam?" And so this breeze is experienced in the entire Jordan Valley from, let's say, Mount Hermon to the Dead Sea area, and it actually wind sweeps the trees to the east because it's a very strong, and it's running right now. Otherwise, I would be outside, but the wind would interfere very much with our communication at the moment. So this is a regular phenomenon. This summer was quite less intense heat-wise. We were up to about 45 degrees for 2 or 3 weeks, 45 degrees centigrade. So I'm not sure, that's probably about 100 and...
That's pretty hot.
112,
Yeah.
116 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And then some summers it has gone up to 50 in some moments, but that's more unusual.
Yeah, yeah.
So then right now it's about early 30s, so it's in the high 70s, and at nighttime it gets down to about 24, 25 degrees at the very moment, and we're already into October. So it's very pleasant at this time of the year and in the springtime.
You're in Magdala, or is Magdala nearby? Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Well, we have 2 things. You introduced the program, you're in the city of Migdal, and that's the Hebrew word for tower. And so in the Aramaic version, it's Magdala Nunaya, and in Hebrew, Migdal Nun, so it's fish tower. And already in the Aramaic version, there's a little bit more of the A sounds, which transliterated into the Western languages, Magdala or Magdala, depending on the Romance languages or the Anglo-Saxon languages. So we're here in Magdala, which obviously is the name then that helped to identify the Mary of the many Marys, who was that very special disciple of Jesus and the first witness of his resurrection.
Now, is fishing, obviously, if the town's name kind of means fish tower, is fishing like the staple, or was it the staple of the town at the time that Jesus walked?
You know, something we love to find in understanding biblical context is extra biblical literature. That means literature outside the biblical perimeter. And there are actually 5 authors who tell us that from here was exported into the Roman Empire, even to Rome. And recently I learned from a great Italian scholar who was visiting. He had read a book contemporary to the time of Nero, the emperor, so we're talking about the 60s, and that's the time of Peter and Paul's martyrdom as well. And the sign of how you could show you're an empire was to have food on your table from many parts of the empire. Because if you were able to get food from Germany and from Croatia and from Spain and from here in the Middle East, then in Egypt, then you had an empire.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very interesting insight. And that was just a regular book of literature from the time.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating to know that.
That also adds another wonderful thought, Jeff. If they're exporting fish from here to Rome, maybe their cousin has gone on the boats over there and selling it for them over there. So Rome is no longer that far away as I imagined when I was a child, or even when I was studying theology and scripture. Rome is within their purview. It's a place where they sell their fish.
Yeah.
Okay, it takes a week for the boat to get from Caesarea Maritima to Rome, Caesarea Maritime to Rome, and 2 days maybe by mule from here to Caesarea. But it also, in a certain sense, collapses the distances. It becomes more this cosmopolitan, this commercial arena, the Mediterranean, that a little bit like we see the world today, the one world view. Everything was in a certain sense within reach. It wasn't out of their reach. It was part of their reality.
Right.
And obviously what the emperor decided in Rome had impact everywhere. So maybe they weren't that far away, because if they had trade there, there was a give and take and over and back, you know?
Yes. Now, there was a recent discovery of a synagogue where
Yes.
you are. That's fascinating, because is it possible that Jesus may have preached at that synagogue? I mean, is it,
well, when the pilgrims ask me that, I always say that I can't assure them because we lost all the videos. But we actually have 2 synagogues for the price of one.
Yeah.
Just last year we found a second synagogue. It's not on our property, it's across the road. It was found in a development of an intersection. And we're the only town in antiquity that has 2 synagogues. But going back to your question, in 2009, we were doing preliminary excavations to prepare for building our guest house, our hotel here, and the whole pilgrimage center. And in that process, we found this incredible synagogue. It has mosaics and frescoes like you find in the villas in Pompeii, which is a very unusual discovery, because that's the highest standard of Roman decoration, Roman period decoration. And here again, we see that influence, which is not a surprise in the region, because Herod the Great brought the engineering and the artistic level and the social styles from Rome to here. And we see that in his palaces, in the remains of his palaces. But to find these decorations of frescoes and mosaics in Magdala, like you have in every room of every palace in Pompeii, near Naples,
wow,
which was destroyed by Vesuvius, and to see that level of decoration in what would have been before considered, a remote country town at the Sea of Galilee, away from Jerusalem and away from Caesarea Maritima, it turns out that here there were some folks living that maybe through the fish export industry and other supporting industries or connected industries, they had the ability and also the cultural level to want to have this kind of decoration in their synagogues.
Wow. How
Now,
big,
this synagogue,
how big is it?
Mm-hmm.
How big is the synagogue?
You could see probably 120, sometimes people say 150 people, I'm not sure, depending on their size. But it's about, it's 122 or 121 square meters. So you can add a bit to that for square yards. And maybe 1,200 square feet or something. Yeah. I'm not sure, I'd have to do the math on that. It was about 21 square meters. The other synagogue is also the same size, but it's not as ornate. And it's only 163 yards away, which is also fascinating to see 2 synagogues contemporary size and capacity within the same town.
Yeah.
So it has 3 rows of seating, as you can see in the pictures, around the perimeter. Well, 2 in the more to the center and 1 near the wall. And then you have the mosaics and you have the fresco, this beautiful wall plaster painting that, because it's applied when the plaster is fresh, it lasts forever. And to think, if the walls of your home or your local church or today that you visit will last for 2,000 years, it's a long one, a long shot, and that's here. We have this type of real context. And the gospel says Jesus preached or taught and healed in the synagogues of Galilee. And actually our synagogue turned out to be the first one found that matches those lines.
Wow.
There are other synagogues here from the Byzantine period. Some of them are quite ornate. And then in Capernaum, it's an extraordinary synagogue with amazing stonework. And that's also from the Byzantine period. So
how far is Capernaum from where you are?
I can see it from right here. It's 4 miles across the lake.
Wow.
It's on the north shore of the lake. And this was the home base of Jesus' public ministry. Yeah. And right up beside it, you have the Mount of Beatitudes, the primacy of Peter, the multiplication of the loaves.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Now tell me I heard about the discovery of the stone of Magdala. What is that?
Okay, inside the synagogue, we found this very ornate stone that has sculpted bas relief or indented forms are on all sides except the underneath, which is it's sitting on 4 legs that are part of the original one unique stone. And the most sensational item on the north facade was the oldest menorah ever found on stone, the 7-branch candelabra. But actually the stone itself is much more valuable than just that, because it has really depictions or sculptings of symbolic sculptings of most of the major elements that would be found in the temple according to dominant archaeological interpretation. So archaeology is a destructive science because it dismantles the sites it finds, but it's also an interpretive science that has to compare items that were found at different times, and also the written records, and the archaeologists try to figure out what is this, what does it mean. And so there's a lot of scholarly work to discern and to elucidate their findings, to see their meaning. And this is quite a challenge. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of debate once the books are published about the discovery, which is still in the process. And then the colleagues will get in a collegial, sometimes very, very intensive, aggressive debate about the interpretations and the meaning of the different parts of the findings. But right now it's considered to be the most important discovery made since the Dead Sea Scrolls, this Magdala stone. It's the size of a little coffee table. And it was overseas only twice outside of Israel. Once was at the Metropolitan Museum in New York, in an exhibit, a brief exhibit on art between empires. And prior to that, it was for 2 years in Rome, in a joint exhibit, which is the first time they ever did that, between the Jewish Museum and the Vatican Museum, on the history of the menorah. And our stone had pride of place because it's the oldest menorah ever found in the world in archaeology.
Wow.
Which means it's a huge treasure for the Jewish people. And then the depictions of the different elements on the stone include the showbread, the altar of incense, the golden altar. The veil is symbolized before the Holy of Holies. There are colonnades, oil lamps maybe, or incense burners, depending on the interpretation of some of the objects. And the showbread, I'm not sure if I mentioned that. And then, of course, the Holy of Holies, which is symbolized through the chariot of fire, which we find in the story of Elijah, and the burning wheels in Ezekiel. So this is a very unique discovery. And we have the original back in Magdala. We're very happy over that. It was away for quite a few years because we didn't have a secure site. And once we had it, then Corona closed us down. And so we finally got the Magdala stone back a couple of months ago here in Magdala, the original one.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, when we come back, I'll ask Father Kelly about life in Magdala and how his team is helping solve some ancient mysteries about life in this ancient Jewish fishing village.
You're watching Joe Watkins' State of Independence on Lighthouse TV. Positively different. Share your comments about today's program in the comment box at joewatkins.org.
We're visiting with a very special guest tonight from the shores of the Sea of Galilee. That's right, the Sea of Galilee. Father Eamon Kelly, the Vice Director of the Magdala Center, the site of an archaeological find that's helping us experience the ministry of Jesus in new and exciting ways. Father Kelly, describe what the area around Magdala may have looked like Is it still an active archaeological dig?
Yes, we're at the foothills of Mount Arbel, which is really a hill in American terms, and it's we're in a little strip of land between the foothills of Mount Arbel and the Sea of Galilee, and it's basically all archaeology. Everywhere the roads are built on top of archaeology. Wherever you dig, there's something to find, and we already have a map underneath of a lot of things we would like to dig in the next couple of generations. So you can even tell your grandchildren to get ready, that in a few years' time they'll be able to come and join a dig.
Yeah. So are things built on top of each other? So you dig because you find what used to be, the further down you dig, you find that what used to be there? Is that how it works?
In some of the sites in the Holy Land, it works like that, like Megiddo, Bet Shean. They have maybe, in Bet Shean it's 14 levels. In Megiddo, it's maybe 26 different levels of culture that stretch over thousands and thousands of years. In Magdala, there's a site just south of us, adjoining us, belonging to the Franciscans, and they have owned this for over 130 years. And they have found, I think, 1,700 years of archaeology from the past, from the Byzantine, from the Hellenistic period. So we're talking about, let's say, around the time of the Maccabees after Alexander the Great, and up to the Ottoman period. And so then the Turkish period that was actually only finished with the First World War 100 years ago. So then we have on our site mostly first century, although some parts of it have signs of second and third century occupation. And it's all archaeology under our feet. And that's one of the beautiful things about the Holy Land. Everywhere you walk, you sense the presence of what happened here. You can't be oblivious to it.
Yeah, does it seem that people, I'm guessing that people were smaller physically 2,000 years ago than they are today. In general, that people might have been inches shorter and smaller than people are today. Is that reflected at all in the synagogue and the architecture?
Gosh, I have to draw a blank. You're the first one to give me that question. I don't have an answer, Joe, but I think that we had the same problems that they had. Problems of envy and jealousy, problems of wanting to destroy our enemies, problems of reconciliation, problems of goals in life, if it's all fulfilled with material things, or if there's something more. And I think one of the things that people experience when they come here is they see the Sea of Galilee and they say, gosh, this is not a painting, this is for real. Your feet get wet if you put your feet into the Sea of Galilee. It's real water. The temperature, the wind, the stones, the archaeology, the ceramic. You pick up a piece of broken ceramic and you wonder who held that before it broke. Was that Mary Magdalene's jug or pot? There's a contact with reality, which becomes a reality check, because many people put religious thinking into the potential or the possible or even the legend or the mythical. And actually, there's a very historical touchstone for the wonderful gift we have received over 2,000 years. And that actually challenges people a lot. It's in the Holy Land, I think the visit is profoundly moving for people, especially if they had even some notions from their childhood of biblical stories. And even if they haven't been practicing, there's something marvelous about how this touches hearts. And one thing about our site is very special is that given the diversity, because I'm a Catholic priest, and now I can tell you, would you like to see our synagogue? And this raises eyebrows. A priest saying our synagogue, it's not crazy. Are you going back on the plane after visiting here and you're sitting beside a Jewish family and you talk about, did you see our synagogue? Well, you're a Christian. What do you mean you have a synagogue? So this is it's a whole connection to our beginnings. The Gospels say Jesus taught and healed in the synagogues of Galilee. And suddenly there's one right there in front of your eyes, even though scholarship into the 90s was denying the existence of synagogues. Part of scholars, and so you have this very strong touchstones, and we have integrated this archaeology into Duchan Altum, where we're doing the interview right now, and so we have the mosaics in here and the fresco colors, and we have a chapel downstairs, the Encounter Chapel, with this similar structure to the synagogue, and this helps us to bridge with each other. And this is one of the big qualities we need in our world today, to recognize the treasure the other has.
Amen.
And we could say that for every human being, because we're all made in the image and likeness of God, which is the ultimate treasure. To find a synagogue is fantastic, but imagine to discover that my neighbor is in the image and likeness of God, even though he's very different or she's very different to me.
Yeah.
And to discover that shared treasure. So we have, let's say, we call Magdala crossroads of Jewish and Christian history. And that's this language coming out of the archaeology, but the spirit here is a crossroads for everybody. And another big theme, obviously, here that stirs a lot of people's hearts is the relevance of the theme of women. Since Mary Magdalene is associated with this place, then it was an opportunity to highlight the great dignity and calling and mission and the gift women give to the world through the what's now called the feminine genius, that extraordinary capacity that the Creator has put into every woman, and the gift they are in our world. And so that's celebrated here at Magdala, and then that leads to many conferences and events, encounters, conversations, and a lot more things to talk about there. Maybe when we have one of those programs in March on Women's Day that's celebrated worldwide, we could do something there, Joe.
Thank you so much. Well, Father Kelly, I know this was another long day for you. It's been such a fascinating conversation, and one I know will help so many deepen their relationship with the same Jesus who walked on the sea so close to where you are this evening. Blessings to you, sir.
Joe, can I make you an offer?
Yes.
Every morning I do a live stream of the sunrise, commenting the daily scriptures and nature in the backdrop of the sunrise.
Yes.
And so you can see that on your Instagram, your Facebook, your YouTube, and it's a nice thing to show to people who will never come here.
Yes. Wonderful. I love it. I love it. Thank you, brother. God bless you.
Learn more about Joe Watkins and the mission of this program at joewatkins.net. And tell Joe what you thought about today's program in the comment box.
So now let's have a closing thought from our great producer, Jeff Coleman.
Well, we don't rely on sight to inform our faith, but sometimes, as Father Kelly was talking about, it is helpful to say that our faith is connected to a reality of a person, of a place, of a sea, of all the events of a synagogue, a literal place where Jesus was. So I thought this was a very special conversation.
Yeah, and you were there. You were just there.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. God is so good. Well, we do walk by faith, not by human sight. Or as Hebrews says, our faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. But isn't it amazing when every now and then the curtain is pulled back on evidence that demands a verdict for the truths of Scripture? I'm so glad that Jeff had a chance to visit Israel and to see these things in person. These events happened. God is real. His Son lived and died on the same earth we live on today. What we do with that truth is so critically important. Send me your feedback on today's program in the comment box at joewatkins.org. It means a lot to me and the team here at Lighthouse TV. From America's first capital, Philadelphia, I'm Joe Watkins. Thanks so much for watching. God willing, I'll see you again next week. I'm glad you went there.
Well, it's time for you to go back.
I can't wait. I can't wait. Sea of Galilee.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see the palm trees and the eucalyptus trees.
Just beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Joe Watkins' State of Independence is a production of Lighthouse TV, positively different. Made possible in part because of the support of viewers like you.